Today's culture wars partially stem from the different definitions of freedom. There are seemingly four most common definitions of freedom. My commentary on this will be based on the academic agents. Why Rousseau is the problem, the Sargon of Akkad. Definition 1. Self-actualization. This is the ancient, aristocratic, and often right-wing and social conservative definition of freedom. You're your freest when you're your best self. For example, if you studied hard, worked out at the gym, watched a diet, cultivated good and virtuous habits. This is you achieving self-actualization. This definition of freedom can be traced back to Aristotle and Friedrich Nietzsche. Many social conservatives argue that vices, such as pornography, prostitution, gambling, and drugs, prevent self-actualization. Definition 2. Freedom from coercion. This is the classical liberal definition of freedom. You're free to walk down the street, but not to make anyone else carry you down the street. Your freedom to throw punches ends where someone else's face begins. This definition of freedom can be traced back to John Locke, Herbert Spencer, and F.A. Hayek. This definition seems to be more popular among parts of the United States of America, and maybe even the Czech Republic and Estonia. Definition 3. Convenience. Lack of personal responsibility and or lack of boundaries. I'm free to do whatever I want without boundaries. I'm free to make you carry me down the street. In the words of YouTube user Mad Robot. Freedom is being unconstrained by responsibility, not having to worry about food, housing, education, transportation, healthcare, etc., not having to suffer the consequences of their own actions, playing the victim and blaming society or others for their own inadequacies. This definition of freedom is promoted by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Karl Marx, and Jacques Derrida. This is the leftist definition of freedom. Definition 4. Group self-determination. My tribe or my nation is free to govern itself. This is probably the definition of freedom outside the Western world. I do support localism, local autonomy, self-governance, and decentralized government, but only if the rights of the individual are respected. For example, should a group of people be free to beat their children for no reason at all, for minor offenses, or even worse, perform animal and human sacrifices? For a less family-friendly example, should people be allowed to commit marital rape, mutilate the genitals of tribe's members for being a member of the tribe, or torture animals, or kill endangered or threatened animals when doing so is not absolutely necessary just because it's part of their culture? Real examples of this would be the Plymouth colony, which was a totalitarian theocracy, and even better examples would be Afghanistan, North Pakistan, rural Yemen, and parts of Northeast Africa, of totalitarian fundamentalism, genital mutilation, and honor killings. Genital mutilation.
Human livestock. An old television special featured great boxing matches of the past, including a video of a match between legendary light heavyweight champion Archie Moore and a young Canadian fighter named Yvon Durrell. In that fight, each man was knocked down 4 times. Since Archie Moore was also among those serving as commentators on the program, someone asked him if he knew that this was a great boxing match while he was fighting it. "Yes," he replied emphatically. At the time, he had said to himself, "This is the kind of fight that any fighter would love to be in, a knockdown, drag-out, and emerge the winner." Overcoming adversity is one of our great desires, and one of our great sources of pride. But it is something that our anointed deep thinkers strive to eliminate from our lives, through everything from grade inflation to the welfare state. The anointed want to eliminate stress, challenge, striving, and competition. They want the necessities of life to be supplied as rights, which is to say at the taxpayer's expense, without anyone's being forced to work for those necessities, except, of course, the taxpayers. Nothing is to be earned. Self-esteem is to be dispensed to school children as largesse from the teacher. Adults are to have their medical care and other necessities dispensed as largesse from the government. People are to be mixed and matched by race and sex, and whatever else the anointed want to take into account, in order to present whatever kind of picture the anointed think should be presented. This is a vision of human beings as livestock, to be fed by the government and herded and tended by the anointed. All the things that make us human beings are to be removed from our lives, and we are to live as denatured creatures controlled and directed by our betters. Those things that help human beings be independent and self-reliant, whether automobiles, guns, the free market, or vouchers, provoke instant hostility from the anointed. Automobiles enable you to come and go as you wish, without so much as a by your leave to your betters. The very idea that other people will go where they want, live where they want, how they want, and send their children to whatever schools they choose is galling to the anointed, for it denies the very specialness that is at the heart of their picture of themselves. Guns are completely inappropriate for the kind of sheep-like people the anointed envision, or the orderly, prepackaged world in which they are to live. When you are in mortal danger, you are supposed to dial 911, so that the police can arrive on the scene sometime later, identify your body, and file reports in triplicate. The free market is a daily assault on the vision of the anointed. Just think of all those millions of people out there buying whatever they want, whenever they want, whether or not the anointed think it is good for them. Think of those people earning whatever incomes they happen to get from producing goods or services for other people at prices resulting from supply and demand, with the anointed cut out of the loop entirely and standing on the sidelines in helpless frustration, unable to impose their particular vision of social justice. The welfare state is not really about the welfare of the masses. It is about the egos of the elites. One of the most dangerous things about the welfare state is that it breaks the connection between what people have produced and what they consume, at least in many people's minds. For the society as a whole, that connection remains as fixed as ever, but the welfare state makes it possible for individuals to think of money or goods as just arbitrary dispensations. Thus, those who have less can feel a grievance against society and are less inhibited about stealing or vandalizing, and the very concept of gratitude or obligation disappears, even the obligation of common decency out of respect for other people. The next time you see a bum leaving drug needles in a park where children play or urinating in the street, you are seeing your tax dollars at work, and the end result of the vision of the anointed.
Thomas Sowell has a theory in which there are two visions of human nature and possibilities in our world. In the unconstrained vision, human nature and the world are perfectible. In the constrained vision, human nature is limited, selfish, and unable to change, and the world will always have problems. The first two definitions of freedom are highly correlated with subscribing to the constrained vision, and the third definition of freedom, Rousseau's definition, is highly correlated with subscribing to the unconstrained vision. The popularity of Rousseau's philosophy is probably a major reason, and possibly the main reason, why French people are unhappy and constantly complain. Maybe French people need to read A Conflict of Visions. French people are always complaining and protesting about pensions and the welfare state. If they read the book, it could influence them to have more realistic expectations, both from government and from life in general. Then this part about John Locke's negative rights definition of freedom versus the welfare state positive rights definition of freedom. And I have what I call the prisoner and the bird analogy. Most people don't think that the prisoner is free because he's given a bed, a toilet, food, water, and shelter. Most people don't think that the bird is unfree because the bird needs to build his or her own nest and find his or her own mate, food, and water. But if we purely use the positive rights definition of freedom, the prisoner is freer than the bird. And if we purely use the negative rights definition of freedom, the bird is freer than the prisoner. Also, according to the positive rights definition of freedom, in its pure form, a prisoner in solitary confinement has more freedom than his hunter-gatherer ancestors or primitive people like the Trobriand and Islanders, as that the prisoner doesn't need to work to have a roof over his head and water and food on his table, unlike his hunter-gatherer ancestors or primitive peoples. I think that it would be accurate to say that Americans view themselves as a bunch of people living under a flag, while Europeans, by comparison, see themselves as one big happy family, of which the nation is an extension of, and view government almost like parents. When it comes to individualism and collectivism, I do ask that you either listen to these videos or read the transcripts. Freedom versus force, the individual and the state, the individual versus tyranny, collectivism and individualism, and how the greater good is used as a tool of social control. Some people still want the U.S. to be more like Europe. Rather, it would be with a generous, high-tax welfare state, more centralized government, or stricter weapon laws. I differ on this from both a philosophical, liberty before security, and even a pragmatic standpoint. Here's an excerpt from 12 Lies About Reality by What a Fatalist.
Humans are purely material. Brasilia, Brazil's new capital, was a scientifically designed city in the 1950s. Everything was made to be perfect. There was a mammoth command center and then suburbs designed for the housing. Everything was built on a perfect grid. It was perfect for every reason except one. It was inhabited by real human beings, not ants. Brasilia's obsessive official building system couldn't account for the actual population that showed up, which crowded into slums far away from the city center. If the builders had more flexibility, they would have tried to legally account for this population that appears in every major Brazilian city, or just let them put the slum nearer to the center for an easier commute. Brasilia had no spaces built for public gatherings or cultural events, and thus Brasilia is known for being a horrendously boring city that you never want to move to unless you work for the government. The compartmentalization of work and home has given Brasilia the reputation for being a depressing place to live with no sense of community. This demonstrates a point about human nature, that we don't just exist on a material, rational basis. We're emotional, tribal creatures. Look at the decline in civic participation in modern America, for example, with harsh declines in every form of social engagement between bowling leagues, marriages, church attendance, voting, house parties, in-work friendships, etc. In the meantime, we've seen massive rises in suicide, depression, declines in birth rate, and rises in political polarization. Most people go to work and then go home and watch TV or scroll through Instagram. The modern world's obsessed with the material, often to the detriment of the emotional and social. We've seen this in our modern capitalist model, where people will eschew their families and friends in order to make slightly higher amounts of money. Look at popular culture, which, unlike practically any era of history, eschews really any moral compass except for harm that we mentioned before, for money. Culture really matters. Anyone who's worked with people from different countries or even different subcultures of the same country knows this. We can even quantify how much culture does matter. For example, in the 1970s, the Italian central government gave equal amounts of money to different regional governments, and we saw the results, with the South scoring far higher than the North on measures that demonstrate corruption, wastage, ineffectiveness, and inefficiency. This was also correlated with the measures above, with the North having higher amounts of people in social clubs, people working in larger companies and having more friends, or to say it differently, a more cohesive and trusting society. We find this in wars, with historian Dupuy, having made the calculations on troop and weapons level, came to the conclusion that the Germans in World War II were 45% more effective due to intangible cultural and leadership variables than the British. This would mean that for the British to beat the Germans, they'd have to bring an additional 50% more men with the same technological level as the Germans. For the rest. It's foolish that the US set up democracy in Iraq. Anyone who would have looked at the situation from a non-ideological lens would see that this wouldn't work. The main thing you need for democracy to work is public trust that people will accept losing the election and peacefully step down from power, and also a national identity that's stronger than the tribal, so the largest tribe doesn't just use the democracy as a tool to oppress the rest. Iraq has neither of these. The Iraqi government became a tool for the Shia plurality to oppress the Sunnis, which resulted in the Sunnis rebelling and forming ISIS as a theocratic state. The government that came out of it was extremely corrupt, inefficient, and an Iranian puppet. If anyone was asking me, I would have set up a constitutional monarchy in Iraq. Monarchies are the form of government with the best track record in the Middle East, with Jordan, the Arab states, and Morocco all having histories of stability, and with the exception of the Saudis, less repression. Confucius was known for giving different advice to different people, asking him the exact same question, since their personalities and situations were different and thus demanded different solutions. I'm a huge fan of Stoicism, for example, but I wouldn't recommend Stoicism for everyone, since if you're naturally wired to be really high in extroversion or derive a lot of pleasure in your life from having strong emotions, Stoicism will just appear insane to you. We have to be nimble thinkers. Try not to make everyone in the world be exactly like you. You have flaws, and having people who aren't you exist lets you balance out your own flaws. Number 11.
Comparing freedom in American states. Don't like county governments? Alaska, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Want to drive before you're 17? South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, and Idaho. Many other states allow 16-year-olds to drive. Want to use cannabis? Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. Don't want to pay sales taxes? Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon. Don't want to pay income taxes? Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. New Hampshire only has income taxes on dividends and interest. Want legal prostitution and brothels? Nevada. Convicted felon and want to vote? There's dozens of states where you can do that. Want to own and carry knives? Alaska, Arizona, Kansas, Montana, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. Want a license to carry a gun? Idaho. Want to own guns? Alaska. Want to have sex with a 16-year-old? The South and New England. Want to be perfectly alone? Smoke weed? Have guns? And pay few taxes with your 16-year-old girlfriend? But don't mind the frigid Arctic tundra? Alaska. Libertarianism has already been tried. Most information comes from Wikipedia. Freedom in Europe. And what's great about Europe. Want to drink? Think at or even before you're 18? No problem most of Europe. Want to buy/sell sex? Plenty of countries where it's legal. Want no corporate income tax? Latvia, United Kingdom Channel Islands of Isle of Man, Guernsey, Jersey, and Sark. Dislike government school uniforms, speed limits on highways, or restrictions on advertising, eating, drinking, vaping, or smoking? Germany. Want to drive a moped before you're 18? You can be 14 and drive a moped in Estonia, Switzerland, Poland, and Latvia. 15 in the Czech Republic, Lithuania, Austria, Finland, Denmark, Spain, and Germany, and 16 in the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Bulgaria, Luxembourg, Belgium, Norway, and Sweden. Want to drive before you're 18? Kosovo, Isle of Man, Guernsey, Jersey, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, with runner-ups being France, Estonia, Slovenia, Latvia, Luxembourg, Gibraltar, Greece, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Germany, and Slovakia. Want to be an adult at 16? Scotland. Though you'll need to wait 2 more years to get a gun license. Prefer a flat tax? Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Estonia, Georgia, Guernsey, Hungary, Jersey, Moldova, and Romania. Want to use medical marijuana? Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, the Netherlands, North Macedonia, Norway, Poland, Portugal, San Marino, and Switzerland. And want to use cannabis without being prosecuted like a criminal? Austria, Belgium, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Finland, Italy, Luxembourg, Malta, Poland, Slovenia, and Switzerland. Want recreational cannabis? Georgia and the Netherlands. Want to home educate? Ireland. Want firecrackers? The Czech Republic's the best country for that. Want to own and use suppressors? Norway, France, and Finland. Want unlimited capacity firearms magazines? Poland and Serbia. Want black powder guns with no license? France, Poland, and Croatia are the best countries to be in, allowing both newly manufactured black powder guns and revolvers. Want air guns with no license? Bulgaria, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands are the best countries to be in. Want modern long guns with no permit? Andorra, Austria, Greenland, Monaco, and Switzerland. Want a shall-issue firearms license? 20 countries have you covered. 15 of them have shall-issue licenses for semi-automatic centerfire rifles. 16 of them have shall-issue licenses for handguns. And 14 of them have shall-issue licenses for both. Want to conceal carry? Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland are all shall-issue jurisdictions and conceal carry firearms. Want the most personal freedom, business freedom, and low taxes all combined? Try Estonia, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, the Czech Republic, Georgia, Poland, Monaco, and Andorra, almost exactly in that order. People of Scotland and Ireland, objectively speaking, your nation is far from the freest as in Europe or the West. Putting it in polite terms, you have a long way to go. Freedom in America. Please support the Substack blogs America vs. Europe and the World and Arguments Against Leftism. Here's my social media link tree, which I ask that you keep archive. You keep the link and archive my content. And please.